Okay. Are we good to go? If you're talking, I think you're muted, Harvey. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I forgot I was muted. Anyway, we're good to go now.
Okay, sounds good. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our joint monthly meeting of the Creve Court and Maryland Heights Democratic Township Clubs. My name is Sydney Jackson, and I am the president of the Creve Court Democratic Township. And here with us this evening is also Harvey Ferdman, and he is the president of the Maryland Heights Township. And so, Alan, would you like to lead us in the pledge today?
Sure, I can do that.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Alan. So at this time, we'd like to recognize any elected officials that are on the call with us. If you'd like to, you can just state your name and what jurisdiction you represent in which position.
Susan Taylor, Maryland Heights City Council, Ward 1.
Bill and David Steinberg, committee people for Maryland Heights Township.
Kathy Paulsmeyer, Chesterfield Township Committee woman. I'm sorry, I don't have a picture.
No problem, no worries. Is there anyone else that's currently an elected official with us? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to candidates. Is anyone actively running for office currently? Okay, I don't see any candidates that I recognize, but feel free to stop me if anyone is a candidate, but I don't think we have any with us this evening. But thank you all so much for joining us. I am going to pass it to Ms. Florence Pullen, who is going to introduce our speaker for this evening, Ms. Shira Truitt. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Cindy. Tonight, we have our speaker is Shira Truitt. She's a licensed attorney in private practice. Can you all hear me? I'm a meeting there. Okay. In private practice with offices in St. Louis County, Missouri, and O'Fallon, Illinois. Ms. Truitt's primary areas of practice include business law, family law, estate planning, and probate law. Mrs. Truitt is a member of the Illinois State Bar Association and serves as chair for both the Standing Committee on Women and the Law and Judicial Evaluations outside Cook County. Ms. Truitt also participates meaningfully in the St. Louis community by volunteering and serving as a member of several boards and organizations, especially those that support the underserved and at-risk population in the St. Louis community. She's a native of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and is a graduate of Southern University and A&M College, having earned her Bachelor of Science degree in psychology from Southern University and A&M College, one of the nation's HBCUs. You probably have heard that used quite frequently, HBCUs. Ms. Truitt was admitted as Psi Chi, the honors fraternity for psychology. Ms. Truitt's undergraduate thesis is entitled A Retrospective perspective look at Black male academics. A survey of Black male seniors, Mrs. Truitt went on to earn both her Master's of Social Work with a concentration in children and youth and a specialization in family therapy from Warren Brown School of Social Work at Washington University and her Juris Doctoris from Washington University in St. Louis. Mrs. Truitt, Attorney Truitt, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for inviting me and thank everyone for having me. I'm going to go through a brief synopsis of the implications of the appointment of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. And then afterwards, I will save about 10 minutes for some general Q&A to see if I can help everybody with any questions or anything like that. Is that okay with everybody? And I see heads nodding. All righty.
Sure.
Yes.
All righty. So let's talk about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. First, who is she? Who is this person? She's thrust up on the scene kind of thing. First, she is a product of public schools from kindergarten through high school. And that's important because private schools generally are meant to impart the values of that private schools. Public schools are not, and they are meant to give education and education only. And so that comes into play as you begin to see how things work for her. She is the daughter of two educators. So she understands the importance of education and access to education. And her education is primarily in a non-exclusive background. So everybody can go to a regular public school in their area and access the path that she took toward the pinnacle of her career. And that's important as an implication because a lot of the justices have had private school educations and prep schools and boarding schools. This particular justice does not have that background. She has a background that's similar to most Americans, which is a public education and the daughter of educators. Her name is different. And her name is different and in a good way, because in some places, having an ethnic name like Ketanji, people believe that it disqualifies you. It serves as an automatic disqualifier for holding higher office. And at least that debate, while probably not completely done, it is substantially diminished, such that people can name their child according to their ethnicity, whether that's the African American, Afro-Cuban, or Asian, and still allow for that child to have their cultural heritage and be able to move to the highest pinnacle of success. And it means that it's not a hindrance as much as it used to be for upward mobility. Her appearance is different than all of the justices, every last one of them. Recently, there's been a spate, even here in Missouri, about natural hair and Crown Act and things of that nature that talk about natural hair discrimination. Ketanji Brown Jackson has natural hair. And that is significant because it's always been seen as a disqualifier, a disabling thing, that if you wore your natural hair in the states that you were able to do them as an African-American person, that was an automatic bar and disqualification. And people who wanted more assimilation, you wanted to wear your hair a particular way. This quiets, it does not end perhaps, but it does diminish and quiets that discussion to the point that there is a modicum of success of a person who has ebony complexion, who has natural hair, and who has an ethnic name. And that's never happened within this community before. Usually those things are different. And that means that it doesn't matter what you look like, what your hair looks like, how dark your skin is, and what your name is. You get a chance. And isn't that what we say our democracy is about? Isn't that what we say America is? That you can earn your way in. And it wouldn't matter, those things wouldn't matter. This shows that it doesn't matter. You don't have to be so close to a different culture as to be completely absorbed and not even be able to tell the difference in your appearance, in your name, in your style. Okay. She's also from Florida, not the Northeast. It's a big difference. So if you're not from Maryland, New York, Manhattan, Buffalo, Virginia, DC, in that area, that's a different area than Florida. Florida's closer in politics and in ways to Missouri. That is, she understands then how other people and other parts of the country may think. Interestingly, the other African-American justice on the Supreme Court is from Georgia. And they'll serve as a balance to each other. So she has a different background than nearly all of the justices. There are no elite groups until she got to Harvard, which she earned her way in, but everybody can access that. So isn't that what we say we want? Isn't that when we talk about the American dream, we say that that's what we want? And she's reached the pinnacle of success doing the things that are available to you naturally, okay? Here's another thing that is different for her than for most, if not all of the justices. She actually, not theoretically, not far away, down distant, where you have to find him and hope. She actually had an uncle sentenced to life in prison for a nonviolent cocaine conviction, life in prison. That has affected her personally. And it's led one group to actually say that, hey, for her, the law is not abstract. It's been applied to her in her life. She knows people who actually did that, who experienced that. She doesn't know people who know people who know people. It's not 6 degrees of separation. This is somebody she knew, with whom she grew, that she advocated for. And it helped to shape her life. What he went through helped to shape who she actually is and who she became. So it's not a distant person that we found in the family to help tell the success story. This is someone she actually modeled her life after, her career path. So her career path, let's talk about that. Different from everybody's, because this is the first public defender that's been appointed. That is extremely significant, because most of the ways to the bench actually are from prosecutor or police. Public defender should be a way, but people believe falsely that because you defend people who are accused of crimes, that you are somehow, number one, soft on crime, and number two, that you are more for criminals. Nothing be further from the truth. You need one to do the other. In this country, there's not a prosecutorial system without a public defender system. That's a balance. But somehow the pendulum in terms of opportunity has always swung on the side of the prosecutor as it relates to governmental jobs and their ascension up. So if you want to be a judge, no matter what you feel, think, or believe, the pathway, the career path that you get is you need to be a prosecutor. And so you'll see that people are special prosecutors for this. You'll see on their resumes if they're going for judge, or in the United States, they were a special prosecutor, or they served in some prosecutorial role, because that's the pathway, that's the career path. She didn't have that career path. And what that means for people, for everyday people, is that there's someone in the room not second guessing, but have been successful at articulating specifically the other side of the coin, the other what if, who can clearly articulate, not someone who has to pretend about how this works because we need another side as we write. This is someone who has done it and done it successfully. She didn't do it for 2 years or 3 years. She did it for 15 years. That's particularly significant because it wasn't just an opportunity to, get this experience and then cross over and do all these other things. It wasn't a way to sugarcoat the background. In that 15 years, she took on significant cases. In that time, she also, after she left the public defender's office, she did some private practice where she also got a law firm to actually take on her uncle's case because she believed he was wrongfully, maybe not wrongfully convicted, but that his sentence was excessive. In addition to that, She worked on the sentencing guidelines for the United States as it relates to federal courts on the way they sentence people. So again, this wasn't some distant relative that we found after we made it and then said that she was affected by that. No, she actually did something. She saw something that she did not like about the system and worked on it and did something about it. Not complain, not be a victim to a system that is easy to say that this happened and affected my family. But as a result of my uncle being convicted and given an excessive sentence for a non-violent drug conviction, this is what I am going to do because this is what I can do. Eventually, that uncle's sentence was commuted by none other than Barack Obama. But she worked on it. She did the work for it. And it wasn't a 1 or 2 and done. It was 10 years that she did the work on this commission. And that's something about which she can be proud. And what that means is she didn't have a privileged background with which to access opportunities from the top down. She had to find her way from the bottom up and work her way. Well, most Americans have to find their way somewhere in the middle to the bottom and up. Very few of us as elite, because elite is also a small in number group, get the chance to come from the top down. That's the significance. And then she did 8 years as a U.S. District Court judge in D.C. So this is an elevation. This isn't someone who came from nowhere and didn't do anything and had some connections and decided she had some demographics that fit a particular role. Rather, she spent time as a public defender, then in private practice, on the sentencing commission where she was able to make her connections and pass some effective laws and did some effective things as a judge and has an 8-year track record as a judge before being elevated to the Supreme Court. That's important to know because it seems as if it's a Cinderella fairy tale kind of thing, and it wasn't. People who are like her, who are like you, who are like me, have to work, and she did the work for it. Let's talk a little bit about her time as a defense attorney, because that's important. That's really, really, really going to shape a lot of what comes out of the Supreme Court in the next few years. Why? Because and even if she is not, so the Dems are not in the majority, the liberal justices are not in the majority right now. So what's the big implication, right? What's the big deal? If she wrote the best opinion today, she still can't make law because there's not enough people for her to vote in that way. There are 9 people and there are 3, maybe 4 of them. So they don't always get to win. But what does that mean? Plenty. It means a whole lot. But let's talk about her time as a defense attorney. Part of that work, part of her opportunity as a defense attorney, she has to build consensus. And she's known for her opportunities to do so. She's able to easily do that, as I read and understand. And what that means is that she'll be able to talk to the other judges and she will be able to agree and disagree, but build. Why don't we go to this point? Can we at least get to this point? Can we at least do these things? That becomes important as you move forward because it helps them to reframe or come up with a different perspective on particular things that are of particular interest to people, like unlawful search and seizure. It's usually a public defender that has to argue the Fourth Amendment things. That's against the police. It's usually a public defender or private attorney. She understands not just the language of the law, because people can read and interpret that. That's what you go to law school for. But she has practical experience on doing that. Real world examples on why this is or isn't. And she will be a justice who can bring that kind of real and tangible experience to the Supreme Court as you talk about things like an unlawful search and seizure, where one started, where one stopped, what is reasonable for someone driving every day in a car, what they reasonably thought. Because if you live in Florida and you drive every day in a car and you're the parents or you're a child of educators and you go to public school, your orientation on what an unlawful search and seizure is and what invites those things and what is wrong is a little bit different than if you take the subway in Manhattan, or if you're in a prep school or in a boarding school and you're chauffeured to school. It's a little bit different, okay? Self-incrimination is going to be different under her because it's a little bit different to read the law and to say that this was and this wasn't, but to have real world practical experience to say this was self-incrimination and here's a real life example of when that happened in a case that I tried and was successful is a little bit different of a discussion to have than one who it hasn't had that experience. And that people expect that self-incrimination and that law will be changed. Other rights may be implicated under her. Specifically, what people are saying and what the pundits are saying as I read them is that the Fourth Amendment, which is unlawful search and seizure, the Fifth Amendment, which is self-incrimination, the Sixth Amendment, which is speedy trial, and the 14th Amendment, which is due process, will all have implications under this new justice. And that may be why the AFL-CIO on its website said that the working people celebrate Justice Jackson's confirmation on its website. That's what the AFL-CIO said. The working people celebrate that because her background lends to the working people. Now, again, what's that mean? What's that mean that she's here? So she's there and she's all those things that I said plus some. At the end of the day, the people who have her opinion are outnumbered by the people who don't. Okay. But justices write dissents all the time. And today's dissent becomes tomorrow's law. Think about it. The dissent in the Dred Scott decision became the way to overturn it in the school desegregation cases that Thurgood Marshall did. You take them from the dissent. That's how that's done. A very good example, a more recent example of a dissent was when Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote the dissent for the Lilly Ledbetter versus Goodyear tire, where Ms. Ledbetter alleged that she was paid in a way that imposed a gender bias on her. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote in her dissent, that's up to the legislature to do something about it. And what happened? You got the Lilly Ledbetter Equal Pay Act that was signed under Barack Obama. But that came because Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote a dissent. That didn't come because the Supreme Court overturned the law that undergird that decision. That came as a dissent. Justice Jackson will be able to write dissents that give guidance to what could happen, what you should do in the future. So if I come with a decision that talks about those things, or I come with a case that talks about something and I'm not gonna win, she can at least give me, here's what you could do next time. Well, that's the bread and butter by which we now change the laws. That's how we change things and do things. That's gonna have a particular impact on voting rights, for example. That's gonna have a particular impact on gender equity. The law may not be here on your side at this moment as we speak, but here's how you get there. As I like to say, a soft no is better than a hard no. If I can't have it, tell me why so that I can change it. Justice Jackson will be empowered to tell me why so that I and you and everybody else knows what to do. You know what it is. It's transparent. There's no back room. There's no, you should know this and this is, we're going to hide the ball from you kind of thing. If I don't have this right, tell me what's, just like any educator or any student on a test. Don't just tell me I got it wrong. help me understand why it's wrong, because the next time it comes up, I can do something about that. That's going to be the power that she has in her dissents. The other thing that she'll have is she, you know, and we want to talk about it because it's there. There's been a lot made of her minority status, and there's a lot to be made of her minority status. But this is the first time in all the history of the United States that there will be 2 African-American judges on the Supreme Court at the same time. And she offers a balance to that, because African Americans are not monolithic. They're not one way. Justice Thomas can remain conservative while she offers a more liberal approach, because people are people. And it allows people to, everyone to be conservative or be liberal if they have that choice, because the balance is there on that court. That's important, because there are African Americans who are conservative as Justice Thomas is. But it doesn't fly in the face of the liberalness by which Judge Jackson is. And it's a balance. And that's what's going to be key here. There's no one way. There are 2 ways. There are all of the ways, because African Americans are not just one way. That allows that there will be more than one perspective of African Americans on the court. Justice Thomas has his, having grown up in Georgia, but Justice Jackson will have hers, having grown up in Florida. And they are one generation removed from each other. Why is that important? Because most justices retire at or around 80, 81 years old. Justice Jackson is 51, means she's got 30 years. If give or take, you know, if nothing happens, if she goes to the normal time, about 81, when you do that, and she will represent the current generation. And that's significant, very significant. This is also the first time that there will be 3 minorities on the court, 3 racial minorities with Justice Sotomayor. Because now you, and 3 of 9 are racial minorities. That's significant. The court has never been more diverse than now, ever, by gender or by race. What that means is you've got, in this case, Justice Thomas from Florida and Justice Thomas from Georgia and Justice Jackson from Florida, which represents the Southeast, but Justice Sotomayor, which represents the Northeast. She's from New York. That's going to be a significant wide swing in terms of opportunity to see different perspectives, different sides, different factions from different points of view. It'll be interesting to see what their take on things are now that there is more of a representation of how ordinary Americans, how people like you and I, the vast majority of people, see things and are affected by things. And I think that that's important as we move forward. In closing, I'd just like to share that I'm excited to be with you. I look forward to having your questions and to seeing what, if anything, you think the implications of having the appointment of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson are for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Truitt. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop your questions in the chat and we'll make sure to get to those. But thank you so much. Are there any questions for Ms. Truitt?
Not all at once now, not all at once. Ms. Taylor, you're muted though. You have to take yourself off mute, Ms. Taylor. There you go.
I thought I did that. So it was bleeding me. Sorry on the screen. This is a question that is not directly relevant to Justice Jackson. I'm wondering, though, is that okay if I go a little off field here?
Sure, if I can answer it, I'm willing to try.
Thanks. Well, I'm wondering what you think about term limits for Supreme Court justices.
The challenge is the same as the challenges have been with term limits in Missouri. There are pluses and there are minuses for that.
Right.
And there are just gonna be challenges for that. For Supreme Court justices, the challenge here is that you are free from all political anything. So what you do because that's actually what you think. And that there's no other way to be, and it's a pure form of thought that was done at a time when that was appreciated and that was the role that we played. It allows you to be free, if that's what you choose, from all interference, because you already know that no one can do anything and you can actually give what you actually think rather than what you need to think in order to survive to fight the next fight and maybe win that fight.
Thanks. I don't know about it. I mean, I don't know what I think. So I was curious to see your input. Thank you.
You're welcome. What do you all think about her?
I'm excited. I don't feel like I know her well yet, but I'm excited that she's there, and everything I hear about her is pretty exciting.
It seems to be
I was
really
very
exciting.
impressed with.
Go ahead.
I was very impressed with her during the hearings. She kept her composure, which she must be a saint.
Those, as far as I understand them, can be very hard, but it is when you practice before a appellate court, that's generally how it happens. There's no audience, there's no jury. The judges just they pepper you with questions, and you sit there and answer them. And if you do that for a while, there's at least some basis of experience from which to pull. And I think that can be helpful in situations like that.
Mhm. Well, I am happy to see her being confirmed. I've always felt that we need to be a country that is represented by all of the people in the United States. I'm very happy with the experiences that she has, because it's nothing like being someone who knows what people are going through, who will be able to help people. And I'd like to see people, no matter who you are, represent in a right, justified way. And I think she will do that.
I agree with you there. What is really, really good, what I really, really like about it is that, you know how when you start to practice words, those words have their own place in your life, in your own reality, and that becomes a reality? She has the words of a public defender, which means that she knows how to humanize people. She knows how to explain in a way that people understand what happened here. And she knows how to ensure that these things are kept in a way that makes sense for people who are receiving it, because you still have to, it's one thing to know it. You all know this. It's one thing to know things and understand them yourself. It's another to enable someone to convey it in a way that helps other people understand and accept and then act on that understanding. And she's been able to do that successfully, not as a prosecutor, because it's easy to say I'm tough on crime. I'm tough on crime. Prosecutors run on the record of convictions. I have these many convictions and I do these many things, and that's how you know that I'm tough on crime. I did this, I prosecuted these things. Public defenders don't have that. They don't. And so it becomes more difficult to convince people that their job is equally as important in a system where justice is in the balance. And I like that she's been able to do that from the other angle. Mr. Ferdman?
Yeah, thank you. Are there any local judges? I know our judges are elected, but are there any federal appointments or any judge appointments going on around the state of Missouri or in the state of Missouri that we should be aware of and that we could potentially advocate for?
So in Missouri, Missouri has a hybrid plan called the nonpartisan court plan, and judges in very large areas, St. Louis City, St. Louis County, I want to say Greene County and Jackson County, all are appointed. Whereas judges outside of those counties, because they are believe them to be more rural and more accessible, and you know them anyway, are elected. That is how Missouri's nonpartisan court plan works. So in St. Louis County, for example, when those people run or they are appointed by the governor in those areas, that's a different angle than having to be elected. I am not aware of any judges that are doing anything on the federal level. I believe all of those cases, all of those slots are filled. I could be wrong because I haven't looked, but I believe those places are now filled. And I don't believe we have any slots now on the federal level. But even on the federal level, those are appointed positions. You need Democratic groups like yours to advocate for those people who want those positions.
Hmm.
I see some hums. What's wrong?
Just thinking of the implications of that. I was unaware of that. And I'm thinking the governor is appointing the judges, therefore we must have Republican leaning judges. That's my conclusion, uninformed conclusion. But
well, there are a couple of ways that you can look at that. Currently, this second, right now, there are the ways that citizens can participate that lawyers can't do that are available to you this second, right now. If you were to go on the Missouri Bar's website, I believe they are accepting applications to from citizens to rank and score judges and give them a review so that you can determine if you recommend them to be retained or not retained. So there is a process. You do that right now. There's a process by which people can participate in it, and it's built into that process that people can do that. You may or may not be left or right leaning. In Missouri's nonpartisan court plan, there is always at least one, if not two people who cannot be lawyers who are appointed to that commission. So there's always a public seat. There is one in St. Louis City, there's two in St. Louis City and two in St. Louis County. So it's always headed, always headed by the current chair of the Missouri's Court of Appeals, at least for circuit and associate circuit. And so it's whomever is the Court of Appeals. Then there are going to be two lawyers that's always elected inside of the bar. So citizens don't have a chance to do that part, but citizens can ask to be appointed to the other two citizen portions of the thing. And that's how citizens have their input as to who is and who isn't on that committee. I believe that to be about a 5 or 6 year appointment or something like that. So it's a pretty decent time, and they're staggered, so that there's a pretty decent time. And the one I just told you about that's open now are judicial evaluations. And that's how you rate in this state. That's how you rate judges on their work, and you get to see what they do, and you state whether or not you recommend. They're taking applications for that now. So there is an opportunity for citizens to participate.
So that's the process that they use when they come out with the ratings for the judges
Yes.
every so often. And then once those judges appear on the ballot to be retained or not, that's how they get those ratings, is from that commission.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yes.
either.
Oh, that's okay. Those are questions I can answer. I'll answer all questions I know the answer to.
I appreciate the education. Oh,
No worries.
all right. I'll put me on mute again. I have a 20-year-old cat that makes kind of strange noises these days. So
So yes, there are options for citizens to participate. Our process is not a closely held process. You do have to know, but you can always call the bar and just ask them how these things work. They publish quite a bit of literature. I've been a part of some of that literature. So they put things there for you to have, and it's out there. If people ask me, I know about it. And it's always there to be accessed. So there are options for ordinary citizens who participate in their community to participate in these options. Ms. Pullen, I see your hand up.
Yes, I do have my hand up. I know a couple of years ago when we had the voting, there were some judges on the ballot, and there were protests to not vote for a particular judge. And I guess you see that around the polling place. And then these judges did not win because I guess of the protest. But what could be some of the things that would cause the public to want to get judges out of their judgeship? Because I don't know what had happened, but some of the things that could get judges out of their judgeships.
There are a lot of things that can do that. Certainly, how people relate to people. So one of the big sticklers that I am is I like for people to relate to people in a particular way. I don't mean you had a bad day. Everybody has bad days. I don't mean today was a bad day and you were sort of, abrupt. I don't mean that. I mean that perhaps your way of communicating is always abrupt and everybody perceives it to be abrupt. So it's not the Wednesday people think it's abrupt, but the Thursday people are okay. It's nobody likes that. And you don't want to relate to people in a different way. Well, that becomes difficult and citizens won't retain you when they have that experience. Part of the challenge, of course, is unless you are in some kind of trouble or some overwhelming happiness, so you're adopting a child or you're, being guardianship. Other than that, it's just when you are in trouble, which you try not to be, right? Because that would make sense, to be in trouble so you don't experience the judges. So part of what citizens can do is say, hey, I don't see you over here. These things are important to me and I didn't see you here. So if it is whatever annual dinner you go to, if you see them, it would have been nice to see you here. It would have been nice to see you over here or to have you participate in this. Sometimes if you invite them out, because people try not, it's a fine line. They don't want to push you into doing something, of course, and they don't want to sort of make you do it or make you guilt you into doing it. But at the same time, if you have questions, they will answer. So sometimes just asking them to come out to certain things, most of them enjoy doing that. If they get the invitation in enough time and they can put it in, they usually are pretty good with doing those kinds of things. I've not had someone who said no just because they want to say no, kind of. I've gotten those. And I've had things on Saturdays. I've had safety fairs. I've had, meetings where I want them to come talk to youth on a Saturday morning and they show up. If I tell them in enough time, they agree to it, they'll show up. And they give ideas so they'll do those kinds of things, but it is hard for them to know what to do and how to do that without feeling as if you impose on somebody, right? Because it's a separate branch of government. And it's like the governor asking you, can I come to your birthday party? Yeah, you can come. Yeah, you can come. Rather than you inviting the person to your party kind of thing. So if you ask them, they generally are good to socialize, and you can tell them, we would have loved to have had you there. And sometimes they can tell you why they weren't there. Like, I couldn't go to the Microsoft dance because I have those kinds of cases and that would represent a conflict of interest to me. But if you had gone to the legal aid ball, I was there because I do care for justice, but I couldn't go to the dance with the computer tech people because of, these implications. So a lot of times they can tell you that. I saw that someone placed in the chat that the reason for the appointments were a backlash. Actually, the reason for the appointment of judges, because I looked this up, because I'm the curious kind, there were, and it wasn't us. It was the first time. It wasn't St. Louis. It was that Kansas City. It was them. They had, so it's Kansas City, it's a mob thing. There was a mob boss appointing judges. And when they got him out of Kansas City, he was appointing judges from jail to get him out of jail. So, you know, they had a real one who could have, the St. Louis, so I see, yes, they also had a boss, and so did St. Louis. But the mob boss in Kansas City is why you even got a nonpartisan court plan, because he was literally, you called him and he appointed you as judge, and that's just how it was going to go. And they put him in prison in Kansas, and he was still appointing judges. They had to do something about that. And the only way that they could do that they came up with was the nonpartisan court plan, which is how it is not implemented everywhere. It actually is where, in my opinion, any place large enough to have a mob boss. So St. Louis, Kansas City, St. Louis County, Greene County, those kind of places where it's big enough to have somebody that would be interested in that. But those are the places that have that, seems to me. Areas do have to vote to adopt the court plan now. When their court plan was originally done, it was St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and Kansas City. I believe Greene County adopted it later, and they voted to adopt it because they wanted to get out of the partisanship of things. So when you are asked to be retained, you don't have to put down whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian. You're simply going to say whether or not I'm a good judge. That's what you get to know. You don't get to know whether or not I identify as a person of a particular party. I am a judge. Would you like me to stay? And that's a different question than you get on the rest of the ballot. Any other questions? We were talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson. Any other questions on her? Comments?
So going back to Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, do you think that her appointment to the court will have any kind of different outcome on some of the Supreme Court rulings that we're expecting in the summer, such as the ones on different abortion laws that have been enacted around the country and things like that?
It is unlikely that that will happen because she will not take office until after this term, because that is when Judge Breyer ends his term. She actually clerked for him as part of her term in school. So she was actually one of his clerks, his law clerks. But he is still a justice until the end of this term, which will be the summer. And then she'll be seated in September, October, so. And what's expected to come out then are voting rights cases and a lot of criminal law search and seizure things. The Harvard admission thing is also supposed to come out then and she said that she's going to recuse herself from that particular case on race-based admissions into schools, because she was on Harvard's board at some point in time. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Well,
this has been very informative, and I appreciate you coming.
Thank you. I'm glad I could enlighten everyone. Happy to speak again at any time. Just let me know how I can help.
I appreciate the education. I know so much more now than I did. I mean, I don't feel like I was prepared to ask questions of you. I apologize for that. Like, you've educated me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And this is Florence. I would just like to thank you again. That was very informative. Now, it kind of enlightened me to learn a little bit more about the judges and everything. I like this. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on such a short notice.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to thank you for everything that you've shared with us this evening. does anyone have any announcements for us? Anything for the good of the public? Yes, Harvey. I think you're still muted again.
Okay, I have two ways I can mute here. I have to unmute them both.
Mhm.
I just have one quick comment besides thank you for our speaker tonight. And glad that the judge was appointed. I'm looking forward to good things coming out. I just wanted to show you guys from the invitation that went out, if I can work. There it is. You notice this I did that sticker? I just want to comment a little bit about that. I heard about that a couple of days ago. Apparently a bunch of right-wing folks have printed these up and they're selling them online, and they're encouraging people to put them on gas pumps pointing at the price.
Ah,
So I just couldn't resist to make some good use out of it instead of that noise. So that's the origin of that.
nice.
And that's it. Thank you.
Well, that's a great way to take something that, you know, they made to antagonize and flip it around on them. Are there any other announcements for the good of the people? Okay, well, the only thing that I have is just let you all know that our next meeting is going to be on the third Monday in May, which is May 16th. So we hope you all will join us again for that meeting, and invite a friend, so that we can have as many people here as we possibly can. But thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and we're going to give you a few minutes back on the rest of your evening.
Thought I saw a hand up.
No,
I
it was
think
a
I saw
reaction, a
someone
clap.
clapping.
Okay.
Oh, and State Representative LaDonna Applebaum sends her greetings. She was tied up for tonight.
Okay, well, thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good
Bye.
night, everybody.
Thanks, Brenda.
Bye.